Oh my gosh. How did that get in there? I just don't understand.
Life is a winding road, no telling where it goes.
It's assumed that any sort of change as radical as moving to another country is going to require some adaptation. I mean, hey, that's part of the reason for making the leap. And the first 5 months here in Norway, well, it's required me to remove my American blinders to see life in an entirely new way.
If I never figure out where the road goes.
After nearly 10 days in quarantine, I loaded my bags into a cab and drove across town to a house we had leased, sight unseen.
You can say I lost my mind, I will keep on holding my head high.
For at least the next year, this would be home. I arrived in Bergen with 5 bags, most of which were filled with camera gear, hard drives, and my computer. There wasn't much room left for luxuries like clothes. My luggage weighed a ton, and I was worried about how the big one, the one with the computer, would survive the journey. I watched with bated breath as it was loaded onto airplanes. And here's the computer. And I never mustered the courage to open the case in the hotel out of a fear of what I might find inside. So this was the moment of truth.
Hooray! It's in one piece.
You may be asking, what's the big deal about a computer? Well, I work for a tech company, and they've allowed me to come here for school while also transferring to the team in Norway so I can work remotely. My work requires a specialized custom-built machine, and if it is damaged, I have a really big problem. Before packing it up in Seattle, I removed a few bits and bobs, like the feet, and made certain everything inside was secure.
Oh my gosh. How did that get in there?
So here's a little advice. Don't leave a flashlight in your computer and then ship it 7,000 kilometers to another continent. But hey, at least I found the source of the rattle.
I just don't understand.
Before leaving, I asked the company that built my computer if it's okay to use the more powerful electricity in Europe. The reply was, well, I guess so. I mean, we can't really test for that here. I started reassembling everything for a smoke test. That's a crude way to see if an electrical device is wired properly. When you plug it in, if smoke comes out of the computer, it means you have a problem. I won't deny, I was really nervous when I turned it on for the first time.
Smoke test time. I hope this works.
I realized that a computer is just a thing. A bundle of silicon chips, a few wires, and an aluminum case.
The light's on.
But the promise I made to my employers for working remotely, a huge part of making this move to Norway possible, depends on this thing.
Yes! A happy beep and my keyboard's on. Can't figure out how to turn on this monitor.
Okay, perhaps I should have sorted out how to turn on the monitor before starting the computer.
Found a button somewhere. Oh my gosh.
And what you see here is a genuine moment of pure, unbridled relief. Life in Norway is all about process. Some folks think of it as bureaucratic, and while that's true, I think it misses the point. In Norway, you always consider how your actions affect others. If you arrive at an appointment on time, consider yourself 5 minutes late. No one sits next to each other on the tram, and you certainly don't talk to strangers. That is, unless you're lost. And in Norway, it's best to follow the rules. For example, you wait for the light to change. even when there is no traffic. This idea of process extends to starting your life here. Take opening a bank account. You start the process online, filling out a form. Then you go to your nearest branch where they will scan your ID card and passport.
So it's a Norwegian mobile number?
Yeah.
Next, return to your computer and email the bank that your identification is now in their system, and would they please send the paperwork that you need to sign. After waiting 5 days for the mail to arrive, you sign it and return to the bank and finally open the account. This process takes 2 weeks. Securing my Norwegian ID was also about process. Today is a pretty big day. It's something I've been waiting for. I have an opportunity to finally have my interview at the police station. Normally, you have 7 days from when you first arrive in Norway to schedule an immigration interview at the police station. But with coronavirus, I've been here 3 weeks before I could get a scheduled appointment. The reason for the interview is you need a number here, an identity number, and that number puts you into the system. Everything from being able to open a bank account to getting into the healthcare system, paying your taxes, all of the sort of infrastructure of living in Norway are dependent on this number. So for the last 3 weeks, I haven't been able to get a cell phone or get a credit card. So this opens the door to finally getting into the system, and so it's really important. 3 weeks later, I received email that my ID was now available for pickup at the student center. I had been here for 6 weeks by then. That made pickup day a red letter day. Having my card meant I could now start my life here in Norway, like normal folks do. The catalyst for our move to Norway is school. But that doesn't mean I've stopped working. I've spent my entire career in media, television, documentaries, commercials, and now corporate. I've been fortunate to work as a producer, a director, and a photographer, but most of my time has been spent as a video editor. I've also had the good fortune to teach at the University of Washington for, like 25 years. So education, it's something I hold dear. Okay, enough of the backstory, but I think knowing this helps frame our leap to Bergen. About 2 years ago, I became interested in the potential of leveraging machine learning, artificial intelligence, in media production, and I thought maybe that's something worth checking out. My wife said, hey, if we're going to make a jump like that, why not go big? So in 2020, we were in Norway looking at schools. A program at the University of Bergen was a good fit, so I applied.
Just touch base with you on the presentation.
I'm what is classified as a non-traditional student. Really non-traditional. I certainly get the side eye from other students as they try and sort out why someone's dad is in the class. I would say on average that I'm about 35 years older than my peers and older than most of my professors. But I take it slow and give them time to see that I take the work seriously. To be honest, the work is more difficult than I expected. I'm finding my brain is not as nimble as it used to be, and it takes longer to absorb this avalanche of new information. Wrapping my head around theories and ideas that are new to me, retaining them, and then applying those ideas in different ways is, hard.
Heroes are made like this.
But I'm finding it fun to be on the receiving end of education. I still look forward to each class. The campus is beautiful, an oasis sitting on a hill above the city. But most of my time is spent in the library, probably 35 hours a week, 200 to 300 pages of reading, plus weekly writing assignments. Since the chairs are comfortable, I just put up my feet and dig through the research. There's another reason why I've spent so much time on campus. For the first 3 months, I had no internet at the house. It was a digital desert. My lifeline to the outside world was the Wi-Fi network at school. 6 days a week, you'd find me in the library or the student center doing homework, paying bills, taking meetings for work, or talking with my family. You don't really realize how much you depend on the internet until you go without. At first, the detox was kind of nice. But the requirement that I had to travel 2 miles to school when I needed to send email or talk with somebody at work, well, it gets old really fast. When the installers finally arrived in late October to string the fiber to the house, I was beside myself. As was work, because, well, after 3 months, I could finally do my job. We started this journey solo, not by choice, but because Darcy wouldn't get her visa until I'd been approved for mine. Since that process took so long, I knew I would be living alone for the first few months. One of the things I learned is really obvious if you are on your own. Eating alone sucks. There's no opportunity to reprise your day, talk about future plans, to simply reconnect over a shared meal. The day-to-day of the house, cleaning, laundry, yard work, wasn't so bad. Like anyone else, you fall into a rhythm of cleaning day, laundry day, and shopping. But nights at the digital desert were pretty quiet. No internet, so no television or movies or entertainment. Consequently, I did what most Norwegians do. I went for a walk. There's a phrase here that goes ut på tur, aldri sur, which roughly translates into out for a walk, never grumpy.
And I went to Safeway. I figured out exactly how many bags of...
Darcy and I made a point to connect virtually every day. With a 9-hour difference, I was just ending my day, usually in the library, as she was just starting hers. It was interesting because we were in totally different places, not just geographically, but emotionally. For me, I was trying to adapt to a new life, figuring out how to navigate an unfamiliar culture and a bureaucracy that seemed frustratingly opaque. For Darcy, it was the uncertainty about when she would get her visa, wrapping up the loose ends of our life in Seattle, and especially her anxiety about flying with our dogs. Our dogs are not young. Alkite's 12, and we simply didn't know if they would survive the flight. The day after I had my interview at the police station, she was notified her visa had been approved, and her countdown to Norway began. Five weeks later, I jumped on a train for a 7-hour trip over the mountains. At the same time in Seattle, Darcy packed up the dogs and boarded a flight to Oslo. Bringing your animals here is insanely complicated, with reams of paperwork and a tightly regulated cycle of vaccinations, not unlike humans coming in during the pandemic. We had to meet in Oslo because that's one of the only airports in Norway set up to screen pets from overseas. Since we couldn't really bring them back via the train, I would rent a car for the drive to Bergen. Well, I won't deny that I'm really excited. I've been thinking about this trip for 2 months, and I'm so excited we're finally putting the band back together. But it's not without some trepidation. Still have all the hurdles of getting Darcy through customs and through COVID, and I'm still really worried about the dogs. Hopefully they survive the flight. 13 hours in a cargo hold is a long time for dogs that aren't exactly young. Makes me worried. This journey to Norway was really complicated, with a lot of moving parts, where a problem with any one of them would be catastrophic. Their journey took 17 hours, and while waiting at the airport, I was in the dark about their progress. I kept telling myself that, well, since I hadn't heard anything, it was probably okay. But let me tell you, the moment they rounded the corner, the world was whole again for all of us.